Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to Conversations with Cogee. Title of the show today, you know, we doing I've been falsely accused, part 13. We definitely working hard. We're trying to definitely help all our people out there. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of people that's being convicted, you know, of a lot of stuff that they have no way of being in the vicinity of what happened, and they still going to jail. There's no way that they was even dealing with anything that had to do with the crime. They still getting locked up. As people that they get accused of something that might happen, you know, on an accident, and they turn it into a crime, and there it is in black and white. It was truly an accident. So, you know, I just want everybody out there to know that these shows really mean a lot, and that when we do these shows and we fighting to make these shows better, you know, we need the support that we put out there, and the support that we give, you know, you all doing these shows. We need that same love back. Now, we have a lot of guests that come through that have been through I've been falsely accused, all our shows. And all our guests that come through, you hear the stories. I mean, you hear the ups, you hear the downs. You hear what they've been through when they was in prison. You hear what they've been through being out of prison, trying to get back out into society and, you know, trying to have a life again. And, you know, where people, you know, even though you got out and you was falsely accused, people are still pulling you back in. They still making you feel like, well, you know, you just got lucky. Oh, maybe you did it and you just got off. Instead of just really looking at it like, hey, this person got a bum rap, you know what I'm saying? And now they found out the truth and this person is free. That's like right now, we don't celebrate our exonerees the way we supposed to. You know, all around the world, we should really celebrate them. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when they go into prison and when they going through the court trial, nobody believes them. Nobody believes nothing. They don't believe that they're innocent. You know, only a few people. But far as the jury and far as, you know how they say you judge by your peers, you ain't judged by your peers, because it always goes back to what I say. Anybody who's on that stand and, you know, who's in that jury box, they know nothing about your background, only what's on paper and what was told. They don't know your family members. They don't know nobody. You know what I'm saying? They don't know nothing about you. So they should really take that terminology out. You judge by your peers. That can't be a peers. If I don't even know you, you ain't nothing to me. So, you know, it's all just a rough situation, you know, when it comes to this I've been falsely accused. So that's why me and Jeffrey definitely pulled together, and we want to make sure that we stay strong with these shows. We want to make sure that we don't let up. You know what I'm saying? Because the court system's not letting up. So, you know, when we have our exonerees and we have our people that's innocent, they need help. When they land in those cells and know under God they didn't have nothing to do with that, they innocent, they losing their lives, they losing their wives, they losing their husbands, they losing their respect, they losing their whole family. People, you know, by the time they get out of prison, half of the time, everybody's passed away. We done had exonerees that came through and said, when I went into prison, I had a full-fledged family members. Now that I'm out, I don't have nobody. Ain't nobody left but like me and my brother, or me and my sister, or me and whoever. So these things have to stop. You know what I'm saying? Now, when we do these shows, we don't say go protest and throw rocks. We don't say burn down stuff. We don't say, you know, start shooting. We don't say start doing this to that person and that person. No, that ain't what we're trying to do. We're trying to do these shows with love. We're trying to do these shows with compassion, but we also trying to do these shows with integrity. And we doing with integrity, you know, we feel like that we putting it out there and we want people to really listen. I tell y'all before every show, get your pens and get your paper and definitely get ready to learn. And when you learn, write this stuff down, because you never know with this information that we're giving you guys, you know, you might have to use it. You might have to use it for your family members. You might hear somebody on the job whose child is getting railroaded. You can say, hey, you know what? On this I've been falsely accused show, you know, with Jeffrey and Cogee, you know, I've been hearing this and I got some notes, and this is who you need to get in touch with, and you need to get in touch with that person. I mean, you can be a ball of information for anybody who's going through this. All you got to do is listen to the show. All you got to do is be prepared to learn. But when you listen to this show, don't listen to this show with a negative heart. Listen to this show with an open heart. Listen to this show with a loving heart. Listen to this show thinking to yourself, wow, these two guys, Jeffrey and Cogee, they could be doing anything else in the world, but they spreading love. They definitely trying to open a floodgate, you know, for all these innocent people that's in prison. So, you know, let me do this real quick. My partner's in right now, Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic. How you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Cogee. How are you?
Oh, you know me, man. I'm opening it up like I always do. On fire, man. Definitely trying to hit some of these hearts. You know what I'm saying? And definitely get people to understand where we come from when we do these shows. When we do these shows, we definitely do these shows with compassion. But when we do these shows, Jeffrey, people don't understand the mental strain that it puts on me and you to try to persuade people to understand. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. I think that whenever I talk about, my experience and wrongful convictions in general, the price I pay is I relive that.
That's right.
Emotionally, psychologically. There's memories, and I know that you're deeply moved by the stories of people who are wrongfully convicted. That's why you're involved in this in the first place. So it's an emotional toll that it takes on both of us.
That's right. You're definitely right about that. Now, one more thing I'm going to speak on, and then we're going to move forward and we're going to get this show started. Jeffrey, I feel like with the amount of work that me and you both put out there, and when we're not seeing it, brought back to us from the community, that puts us in a bad position. You get what I'm saying? Because it's almost like you waving a flag and you fighting for all these people, but where they could protect you and they could just go to the website and what's giving something a like? You get what I'm saying? You people go through Facebook and like BS that they see on Facebook. People go through Facebook and it gives something a like that ain't got nothing to do with their life. You know what? It could be ghetto fights, two girls fighting, two guys fighting, and somebody getting knocked out, and you give it a like. That ain't what life's about. What life's about. Life's about, making sure we all are all right in this world. Because like I say, to be in this world, we all got to have relationships. We all got to learn to have compassion for each other because that's how we survive. Can you speak on that, Jeffrey? And then we'll move forward.
Absolutely. Cogee, doing a little bit of internet surfing and hitting the like button, that's nothing at all. That's nothing at all. And people spend a lot of time, in my opinion, at times, an unhealthy amount of time on social media, leading like a virtual life as opposed to a real life with in-person interaction. So in that background, we're talking about bringing light to wrongful convictions, and we out there fighting for the people. I don't think it's too much to ask people to support us in our fight for them by, devoting just a small percentage of their time. They're already spending on Facebook to come and hit the like or to tune in or to help spread the word. Well, they have no problem doing that when it comes to frivolous things, kind of like you're pointing out.
Right.
This is some serious life-changing stuff. I won't go too deep because there's other stuff we'll cover later, but I was just at a conference, the Innocence Network conference. There were 113 exonerees there. And that's just a fraction of the people that have been exonerated across this country. Cogee, this is such a prevalent problem. And you know what? There was 11. There was 11 women exonerees there in attendance.
Wow. Well, you know what, man? It just shows that, we are doing our job, but it takes more than me and you, Jeffrey. It's a lot of great people out there that's doing a great job, the Innocence Project and a lot of other people that, I can't name everybody right now, but it's a lot of great people that can take credit right along with us with what they trying to do, man. It's a lot of great people in this world like me and you, Jeffrey, that can't sleep at night for the love and the compassion that we have for other people. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely right.
Right. So, what we're going to do, we're going to definitely get ready for our first guest, Miss Julie Baumer, and she'll be in a minute. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. And like I said, this world is about love. This world is about relationship. This world is about compassion. This world is about not always looking at somebody like they're guilty, but always, you should wait and hear the full story. When you hear one side of the news, you don't even know the other person's story. The news, they got to make news. That's why it's called the news. They're going to bring you something. You know what I'm saying? So let's start having some compassion. Let's start having a little love. Let's start supporting people who are definitely saving lives. I watch people that support people that don't even deserve it. It's people that support people that don't even care about people. I watch more people support bad people on Facebook doing crimes and they give it a like. I keep watching it. That's support. Anytime you keep watching BS on Facebook, you supporting the BS. Support something real. Support something good. Support something that your family might need one day. So if we build it up and we make it strong now, then if your family, God forbid, get under this umbrella of justice, what we going through, then guess what? We strong enough to fight it, and we're strong enough to bring your family home. But if y'all gonna lay back and it don't matter, that's what it's really gonna come down to. It don't matter, because if we don't matter to the court system, they don't mind. We'll be right back. Hey, what's up, everybody? We back. Welcome to the I've Been Falsely Accused Part 13 with me and Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic. Definitely going to bring the show strong. And we definitely, want y'all's feedback. So, Jeffrey, I'm going to go right to you, and you can introduce our guests, and then we can get the show underway.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Julie Baumer, a female exoneree, who I had the pleasure of meeting at the Innocence Network Conference meeting this year.
Hi.
Hey, Julie, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
All right. So, Julie, when I open the show, I always ask my guests after I open the show, what did you think about what I said? What made sense to you? Did you disagree with anything that I said?
No, you had a lot of points right on. Absolutely. Basically, I liked your closing remark before your first break where you said, if you don't matter to your family, definitely the courts don't mind moving forward with their own agenda.
That's right.
If you don't have a voice speaking up for you, pretty much you're screwed.
That's right. You're definitely right about that. So, Julie, we're going to go right into your story, and we ain't going to take no commercial breaks. We're going to go nonstop because your story is deep, and there's a lot of stuff that I want to ask you as well as Jeffrey, and we do thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're here with us, and I do appreciate you, me and Jeffrey.
Well, no, I appreciate all the work that the both of you are doing to spread awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I want to ask you, Julie, can you tell our listeners what were you falsely accused of?
Child abuse, first-degree child abuse, shaken baby syndrome, which currently right now is a term that is not being used in the courts. Ironically, a couple of years ago, the doctor that originated that term, if you will, back in the 70s, after the explosion of over 1,200 false accusations on a year-to-year basis and almost 250 convictions, he pretty much scratched his head. He's in his early 90s now, and he wrote an article and he recanted a lot of issues and whatnot. That's an interesting. I don't have all of the documentation in front of me, but that's pretty interesting to look into. So currently, if there's a case being convicted, or if there's a case right now in the States, they're not using shaken baby syndrome anymore. They're just using a blunt force trauma, if you will, for the head.
Right. And how did this accident happen? Now, I want you to bring us up to speed right now and take us back to that day and, let us relive through you. And then, after you tell me, then me and Jeffrey, I ask you the questions. But how did you get caught up in this whole situation? And when I say caught up, is because when you took the baby to the doctor, that's what they turned it into something to where you did get caught up.
Pretty much. I was in the process of the private adoption for my nephew, from my sister. She was unable to care for him. And at 5 weeks, there was a difficult birth, mind you, as well. But after 5 weeks, he still wasn't thriving, and he wasn't eating as well as he should for me. And that particular day, 12 hours had actually gone by without him taking down a full bottle and keeping it down. So I contacted his pediatrician. I informed her of my alarm. I was concerned that he hadn't taken anything down, and I was more concerned about him becoming dehydrated. And, I had checked his temperature and made sure, gone through all the little symptoms of, maybe he's got a cold or coming down with the flu or something. Mm-hmm. And so she recommended that I take him into the emergency room for the basis of receiving an IV and to be evaluated, to rehydrate him and to find out what was going on. And when we got to the hospital, about an hour into our visit there, they transferred him to Children's Hospital. And when we got to Children's Hospital, they informed us that they were going to run a series of tests. They weren't sure what was wrong. They were probably suspecting that maybe he had a virus. Mind you, there was no external injuries whatsoever. And so 48 hours later, I was contacted by the sheriff's department and asked if I wouldn't mind coming in for an interview. And so I went in, not really knowing what I was going in for. And it was at that point, during that interview, that I was informed that I was a prime suspect for abusing my nephew. They claimed that there was bleeding on his brain and that they suspected that I shook him. So that's how it all started, if you will.
Okay, Julie, with that whole situation, when you were sitting there and you heard that, could you believe what you was hearing?
Well, for the first 20 minutes, I really didn't know what they were getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was probably about a good 20 minutes into the interview, I realized that they were accusing me of injuring my nephew, soon to be my son, if you will. So I was appalled. I couldn't believe what they were trying to feed me. When I at that moment, when I became defensive, if you will, they started throwing false facts at me. Like, oh, he's got broken ribs and a broken arm, and it looks like you threw him in front of a truck. And I remember even looking at one of the officers and then asking, like, are we talking about the same child? Do you have like a different case that you're working on in another room or something?
Right.
Because you're absolutely crazy. There's no way that child went into any hospital in that condition. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I was appalled. I was appalled. Yeah.
But you said you was in a position to where you was going to take custody of your nephew, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
They didn't think that none of that might have came from the mom before you got him?
No, because generally when in the past, and I guess still presently, even though they're not calling it shaken baby syndrome anymore, generally when a child is brought into the hospital and they're presented, with bleeding on the brain and whatnot, they always assume that it's the last person who's been the caretaker or the last person with the child. So it could have actually been anybody in my family or in my immediate circle that could have been sitting in my seat at that time. It just happened to be that no one was with Philip for the past 24 hours or within the previous 24 hours of I taking him in.
Right.
So therefore, I was the prime suspect. It had to have happened, as my first trial attorney said, on my watch.
So
or he said it didn't happen on my watch, excuse me.
Wow. So when you reached out to your family, told them, you locked up, told them what all was said about you, how did the family take it? What did they think?
Well, they didn't place me under arrest immediately. It took them about 6 months to try to build a case, if you will.
Oh, wow.
So the whole family and the whole situation was in a state of limbo. Immediately, my family backed me up. Secretly amongst ourselves, I guess, we were wondering, maybe did his mother, my sister, do something at the time? She had an issue with narcotics, so we weren't sure if, we were trying to rack back in our brains, like, was there a time when she was alone with him and maybe there was an accident? And then, of course, I was co-raising at the time her oldest son, and he was 6 years old at that time, and we were thinking, okay, well, maybe Brandon, did he pick up the baby and nobody knew when we were out of the room, and did something happen? We were trying to figure out what was going on. After we debunked those theories, if you will, we went ahead and we went back to his birth, and which was a difficult birth, which was induced by Pitocin. In fact, Victoria, my sister, received too much Pitocin at that time, and so immediately we started doing research on that, and got our. After I was initially charged, several months later, that's when I contacted a criminal defense attorney, and my family and I went to him, and we presented our package, if you will, from all the research that we had done as to how or why we believe that what could have caused his injuries or whatnot through the birth trauma. So, that's where it was at that time.
So those months that, like you said, it took them a minute to build up a case on you, I know you had to be a nervous wreck.
Oh, it was traumatizing. It was absolutely traumatizing. There's no words that you can explain it. It's like a nightmare, you know?
Right, right. Jeffrey?
Yes, Cogee.
Oh, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. Now, up until the point that you were wrongfully convicted, did you believe in the justice system even while you were under this suspicion? Did you ever in your wildest dreams think that you were going to be wrongfully convicted prior to the point that played where you referenced a couple of experts taking the stand against you and you then realizing that you were in some deep water? But prior to that, had that thought ever dawned on your mind?
No, absolutely not. Speaking strictly as a layperson, I went ahead and I had complete faith in the justice system. You know, you're born and raised, if you will, in that manner, to trust police officers and to trust people in authoritative positions such as that. I had never even been aware of anybody being wrongfully convicted. I figured, you know, if you are accused of something, that's why you have the court system, and that's why we're allowed to, you know, go before our peers, if you will, and have them judge us through the facts. And so that's actually what happened. I was judged through the facts, but they were erroneous facts that were given during the first trial, and that's actually what led to my conviction.
Right. And you know what, Jeff, let me ask you something real quick. When you were sitting there and the jury came back and they said you was guilty, take us to that moment real quick, and then we're going to move forward. Did the room go silent? Did your heart drop? Or did you think at any moment, I'm guilty? Or did you think, I know this is going to be not guilty?
No. From the very get-go, I was always very adamant about my innocence. I had no shame about admitting that to anybody who wanted to listen to me, and I knew in my heart that there was no way that anybody would buy into how the state presented their case. I couldn't fathom in my mind how anyone could come to any other conclusion other than I'm not guilty. So I was completely confident in a not guilty verdict, ready to move on with my life, if you will. And so, in fact, that evening, the evening that I was convicted, the jury came back probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon after deliberating for several days, if you will, with the guilty verdict. And subsequently that evening, I was supposed to pick Brandon up from school and take him to a dentist appointment. I mean, I in my mind and in my schedule, I kept life going because I just figured, okay, it's going to be not guilty. We're going to get behind this, and then I'm going to get Philip back. And so when they said guilty, yeah, the world stopped for me completely. And I turned around and I looked at my father, and I, just completely ignoring everything around me, and I threw him my keys in my purse, and I said, you've got to go get Brandon and take him to the dentist. That's what I was concerned about. So, and then I started, and then I looked at my attorney and I started babbling off orders to him, and he, quiet down, you can't talk yet. You gotta, do it, you gotta go through with what they're saying, because I was just like in a state of panic, like, because I wasn't married at the time, and, I was living on my own and doing my own thing, and so it's like, who's going to close up my affairs, who's going to just take care. There were so many things running through my mind, and I was trying to take care of business in my mind. I didn't even care what the next words for the judge were going to be or anything. I wanted to take care of business and try to correct this immediately.
Right. But they didn't give you no time limit. They locked you up immediately. They didn't say, they took me immediately. Well, I was going to say, they didn't say, okay, you got 30 days, to handle your affairs, since you got a child or whatever, and 30 days turn yourself in. It wasn't none of that, right?
Nope, absolutely not. And to make it even worse, somehow somebody had put a bug into the judge's ear that if the verdict had come back guilty, that I was suicidal. So I didn't go into intake as normal people do. They actually took me in as a suicidal. So that's a pretty horrendous affair, or something that happens, when you go in. You don't get intake like a regular prisoner. They take you like a mental patient, so it's crazy. And no matter how much you declare I'm not suicidal, they don't care.
Wow. Did they put you on medication immediately?
No. They throw you in what they call the bam bam room. They strip you down, and you've got a little paper gown, and they just observe you like an animal for several days.
Wow.
Right.
And you said at one point when you went in that it was so degrading how they done you an intake and everything when they brought you in.
Oh yeah, that was intake for prison. But after I was convicted, if you will, I had to go and get processed through the county jail and wait for my day of sentencing, which was 40 days later. And then a week after my sentencing, they rode me out to Scott.
Wow. Now let's talk about prison real quick. When you first got to prison, and you knew you coming in with child abuse on your record, right? What was your case?
Oh yeah, child abuse. And I was informed before my sentencing, and when I was sitting in the county jail, they have what's called a TSI, or pre-sentencing investigation. And so the lady comes in and she's talking to me and whatnot, and I went ahead and she warned me. She said, when you get there, don't talk about your business to anybody. And I, from her, and after my sentencing, I was having guards pretty much trying to clue me in, like, keep your business to yourself. And, basically, especially if I was going to plan to appeal it, keep my business to myself. So
right.
Pretty much that's how I did it,
Right. Now let me do this real quick. Let me go to my man Jeffrey. Jeffrey, when you go to court on a case like child abuse or molestation or anything like, and you didn't do it, how rough can your stay be in prison?
It can be as rough as your life is taken from you. So somebody could put a permanent, mark on your face, by cutting you like a razor, or stabbing you, or you could be beat up. It could be one person, it could be many people. It could be the prisoners, it could be the guards, it could be prisoners put up to it by the guards. You're just extremely vulnerable. It's a chaotic and dangerous situation, Cogee.
Right. And even like with you, Jeffrey, you said when you was in there, even though you was in there under a lie and something you didn't have nothing to do with, and you said you had got hit upside the head with something in prison, and you was laying there, and come to find out years later, you get out falsely accused, no charges against you. They found out everything was wrong. What does that do to your mental state, Jeffrey, when you go through so much that whole time in prison, and you got to hold on to it in your soul and your spirit? But then what does that do to you personally?
It put me in a constant state of fear, Cogee. No matter what activity I was doing, I always had it in the back of my head that I was afraid that somebody was going to discover what I was incarcerated for, and that violence would ensue. The fact that you're in there innocent is really irrelevant for purpose, in the other prisoners' minds that decide that they want to carry out vigilante type justice, because ironically, they almost don't think that there's like such thing as a wrongful conviction. So ain't nobody trying to hear that you're innocent.
Right. I hear you. You're definitely right about that.
I think that's almost like the question what you were getting at with your question with
Julie.
With Julie. I mean, was there like would you fear, aside from people just giving you the words to the wise, though, did you feel like you were in danger while you were incarcerated as a result of being in prison for the child abuse charge, as opposed to some other acceptable crime such as drug selling, a robbery, a burglary, or even a murder?
Well, for the first 2 years, I was able to keep my what I was convicted for under wraps, if you will. And I don't know who leaked it or how it was leaked, but it was leaked. And for the first, it was about several months, I walked through a gauntlet line on a daily basis, to and from the child lines. You got the comments, the rude comments, and you got the stairs and people pointing and this and that and everything else. But you know what? I knew my innocence. I knew faith. I knew God was going to get me out of there. I kept my head high. And I walked through those gauntlet lines with my head held high. And I'll tell you, it paid off, because after some time, everybody let up. And I even got respect after that, because I didn't give them the reaction that they wanted to get. And, you know, that's how I got through it. So basically, it was a couple months of, you know, hazing and whatnot. But like I said, when I didn't give them the reaction they wanted, they respected me for it.
Did you ever run into any kind of violence?
Oh, I saw violence, but I was never the victim of violence, if you will.
Right. Did you ever like really worry that somebody was going to come into your cell? Once you knew that they knew, did you ever think at any moment 2 or 3 of them might come in the cell and try to do something to me? Like Jeffrey said, did you live with that fear?
No, because, you know, the women's prison is different than men's facility. You know, in the men's facility, I'm assuming that, you know, they got their own gangs, if you will, that look out for each other. You know, women's population is so much smaller, and they don't band together. You know, you might have 2 or 3 little cliques or whatnot, but the way it is in the women's prison, it's almost like a tier system by your time. So, you know, if you're going in there with, you know, like 9 months to 12 months because of check fraud, a lifer who's been there for, you know, 5, 10, 15 years and knows that they're never going home, they don't even have the time or day for you, because you're just, you know, you're not doing any time. So it's more like a tier system. If you got hard time, they're going to be compatible with you, because it's like, okay, well, we're going to be doing this for a minute together. So, again, like I said, when they realized that they weren't going to be able to push the buttons that they wanted to push, they let up. And no, I never had any. No, there was never anything in the back of my mind like, oh, somebody is going to come rush me, because I never gave anybody any indication to do so. I never, you know, ticked anybody off. You know, I kept to myself.
Right.
I did my own thing.
I hear you.
I was helpful with a lot of people. I did a lot of spiritual guidance and whatnot. So, nope, never did I have any
confrontations.
Reasoning. I certainly never talked about my case to anybody, even after they knew about the case, because my greatest fear is, oh, there's going to be one of these women in here who, you know, who is going to get a little jealous. So if it comes out that I'm appealing it, you know, they can write anybody they want and they can say whatever they want, and the state would love to take that and throw them on a stand and make them a witness. So if your court case does go back to court, guess what? Now you got some snitch who's making up a story just because they're jealous. They don't want you to go home. They want you to stay there and do the time with them. Right.
Now, let me ask you this, and I talk about this all the time, you know, on the air to a lot of different people, because when you go down for being falsely accused, you lose a lot. What all did you lose other than your freedom when you were gone?
I lost everything, including my identity. I mean, you know, outside of material things, my possessions in my home and you know, family and whatnot, and that closeness with, you know, my siblings and everybody, you lose everything. And literally, you lose your identity. You don't have a name anymore now. You have a number.
Right.
And you're no longer a human, if you will, because they dehumanize you by reintegrating every day and reminding you that you're state property and that they control you. So
Right.
you lose everything.
I hear you. And how did you fight to get out? How did it finally come to a head to where you and your attorneys worked something out and it worked in your favor to come out? Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, right at my sentencing, if you will, at the final stages of the sentencing, they asked if I wanted to appeal. God bless them. Of course, I signed the paperwork, get me an appellate attorney. She didn't know what she was doing, so the first appeal went down, or got shot down. Second appeal, about a year later, that got shot down. And then it was about 2.5 years to my stay that we filed, or had a new legal team come on board, and they filed the 6500, and that was able to present new evidence. And so that's how I was able to get the conviction overturned. It took a couple years for it to go through the court systems and whatnot.
Right.
But you know, that's the way it is, I guess.
Okay, let me ask you a question. How many years did they sentence you to?
sentenced me to 10 to 15 years, which was exceeded the guidelines that the pre-sentencing investigator had recommended. The investigator had recommended 4 years because I had no prior criminal history whatsoever. And however, because of the heinous nature of the crime, if you will, and because it was an election year, which that wasn't mentioned, but that's the fact, I was given full-blown 10 to 15. And in my mind, I said, well, it's 15 because if I ever make it to the 10 in the board, I'll never make it out until 15 because for the next 5 years, from 10 to 15, I'm going to keep telling the board I'm innocent, and you got to admit guilt to get out.
Right. Okay, now let me ask you this. How does it feel? Take me back to that first year when you said, okay, I'm 1 year down, but I got 9 more years to go. You get what I'm trying to say? I got 8 more years to go. How do you deal with that and process that in your mind and just be okay with it? Well, I know you got to be okay with it, and you got to deal with it.
Be okay
right.
With it. You're right. You have to be, because otherwise, then they're going to take you down. Then you lose all hope and you stop fighting. I maintained in my mind that I'm going to keep fighting this and I'm going to keep moving forward because I know I'm not going to spend this whole bit in here.
Right.
I knew I was going to get out. I didn't know when, but I knew I was going to get out before that sentence was supposed to end.
I hear you.
And I didn't judge the time by years. I judged it by seasons because it was too hard to do it by years.
Right.
So it was just like, okay, I survived this holiday. Time for the next holiday. Okay, I survived this holiday. Time for the next one.
Okay.
Survived this winter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. Now, we even see in movies that every person that goes through prison and they got a long stay, or they falsely accused, or whatever happens, they have a breaking point. How long were you in there before you hit a breaking point where you just one day screamed or cried and just had to explode to rebuild?
Oh, I never had a breaking point. I had numerous little mini breaking points, if you will, on a daily basis. There was many times where I would cry in the shower because I couldn't let anyone else see that, and I would compose myself and get back out there and do what I had to do. But it was after my second appeal was denied that I had a breaking point with God, if you will, and so I had a little one-on-one with the Lord after that letter came in. But miraculously, a couple months later, after that one-on-one with him, things started coming through for me. So,
wow! And you know what? You said you had your conversation, your mini battle with God. What did you say to him, and why did you feel he forsaked you?
I didn't feel really more or less that he forsaken me, but it was just like, okay, seriously, Lord, everything in my life. I was no perfect saint. I used to call myself an angel with a half halo, if you will. I was born and raised Catholic, but I didn't practice the faith in my 20s. So I was looking back on every immoral thing I did, and I'm like, seriously, this racks up to 15 years, God, seriously? And so, that was the basis of it. And then towards the end of my colloquy, if you will, with the Lord, I went ahead and I said, I dropped to my knees and I said, God, forgive me for my sins, but get me out of this, and I'm yours, and that's that.
Right. And you know what? The thing about it is, even with you dropping down saying, Lord, forgive me for my sins, but there was no sin. You was trying to do something nice by taking this baby and raising this baby and giving this baby a new life.
I was referring to the immoral activities that I engaged in my earlier 20s.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. And that's the only reason I say that is because, did you feel like you was just saying that to God because you was at your breaking point, or did you really feel like, but you explained it to us now. You was talking about life before.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, but I figured, I was like, okay, so whatever I did before I got in here, if it equates to 15 years, seriously, couldn't be nothing that bad. So
that's right. Yeah, definitely. So when it came up time for you to go to court, and you standing there and they going over your case, they reappealing it, and then they said you free to go. How did that situation happen?
Oh, I wish it would have been that simple, but there was several hearings that I wasn't present for, evidentiary hearings, if you will, to present the new case, or to present the new evidence to ask for a new trial or an actual overturn the conviction on actual innocence. And so it was a lengthy process. But I knew that we were going to get it. It was just the fact of getting it there. Initially, when the attorneys took the case back to the DA's office and showed them, it's actual innocence. The evidence is here. Let this lady go. The DA had made a gentleman's agreement, if you will, with my lawyers and told them, okay, well, if the judge buys it, if you will, we'll dismiss it. Everything, we won't retry her. Just let her go on, be about her life and everything else. And so several months after all of that happened, I kept calling my attorney saying, okay, well, what's going on? Did the judge get the file? What's going on? And one of my attorneys actually had to fly from Seattle to Michigan, walk into the courthouse, asked to see the DA, and asked how come we're not getting any word on my file. And do you know, she physically started looking in that office for my file and found it in an office, locked up somewhere in the back, stacked underneath all these other files, as if somebody just threw it back there and decided to forget about it. So at that point, she herself went to the judge with the file and said, here, since your people couldn't give this to you, I came from Seattle to give it to you. So at that, from there, and then it took a couple more months for him to go through, and then, like I said, have the evidentiary hearings and whatnot. But it was November 27th, I think it was, 2009, when another attorney that was Detroit-based came to visit me, and he said, Julie, he said, today the judge overturned your conviction. So he said, I just wanted to let you know that. And so I'm like, well, do I get to leave tonight? And he's like, no. He's like, they have to process you out and all of this other stuff. I ended up staying there for another week because I had to go out for a bond hearing because the state decided to retry me, if you will. So initial freedom from prison, if you will, came December the 9th, 2009, when I was let out on bond. I was recharged, if you will, and then let out on bond. They threw a tether on me and kicked me out the door.
Wow.
To come back for your next court appearance.
Wow. You know what? And what we're going to do, we're on short time right now. If you can stay on with me and cross over into the next hour, I just want you for a few more minutes in the next hour. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Everybody, so thank you for tuning in with us today. Title of the show today, I've Been Falsely Accused, Part 13, with me and Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic. We'll be right back. We got Miss Julie Baumer. She's with us, and you just heard her story. And when we come back, it's going to get a little bit deeper because I got a little bit more to ask her, me and Jeffrey. Then we're going to get ready for our second hour guest who will be coming in as well. So y'all stay locked in and stay tuned in. And me and Jeffrey, we deeply appreciate you guys tuning in. And everybody around the world, we appreciate you guys too. And always remember, this can happen to anybody. Let's be smart and let's be ready to beat the odds. We'll be right back.